Hello, Cecilia and Ramil.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, Cecilia is interviewer and is interviewee. Today's topic is how to learn English, effectively.
Okay. Well, it's pretty easy. How do you think that's the best way to learn English?
Well, I think the best way to learn English is to speak to people, to communicate. You have to study some grammar, I think. But when you have just a basic grammar, and then you just have to just go out with courage and talk to other people who speak English, even if it's not their native language, just anybody who speaks English, and you get to practice, and you need to be able to say what you want to say, even if you know very few words. And I think it's important when you're in the class to try to speak English all the time too. The same thing. If you don't know how to say something, maybe you can make the gesture or make a drawing or ask your teacher, but not use your native language. You know, just speak with a few words. You know.
Okay. Well, no, I wanted to ask you because you used to be an English teacher.
Yes.
Someone is telling me here that you used to be an English teacher. So how did you manage to teach like really beginners?
Well, yes. Well, the first rule of the class was only English is allowed in the class. That was the first rule, and everybody was at the beginning. It was a bit uncomfortable for people, but then class after class they started sort of understanding that that's the important thing. Like if you speak only English, then if you're forced to speak English, then you just have to learn how to communicate. And so they understood how important it was to speak only English, and they did. After a few classes, they were comfortable, right? So that was the first rule. And what I did, I used a lot of pictures. I brought pictures, flashcards with pictures. I used a lot of music, so songs, activities with songs. I made drawings on the board. I used a lot of body language to explain. And I repeated things as many times as necessary, just for them to understand. And if they spoke Spanish to me, because the classes, like where I come from, Spanish is the national language. So if they didn't speak English and they asked something in Spanish, then I would just say, I don't understand, say it in English. And they had to. And that's the way I did. And people had fun. It was okay. I can understand that it can be frustrating for people in the beginning. But then it gets better and everybody just has to speak English. And it's okay. And yes, that's the other thing. Another thing that I told them, and I tried to have a nice environment for people to feel comfortable to make mistakes. So I told them, this is the place to make mistakes. Don't worry if you make one, I'm here to help you. Your classmates are here to help you too. And so we're just here communicating. And if you manage to say what you want to say, then we can see the mistakes later. But just express yourself and don't worry about making mistakes, that's okay.
And one thing I want to know is, how did you work with pronunciation? Did you work with pronunciation at all?
Yes, I did. The thing is that it's like two things that play there, you know. Yeah, karate. It's two things that play there. First of all, it's okay to have an accent. So I didn't expect my students to have like a perfect British or American pronunciation, right? It's okay to have an accent. But then another thing that comes in is that if you have a very thick accent, then people don't understand you. So you have to practice pronunciation. So basically what I did is just, I would just follow, say, common sense of what I heard to be something strange. Like if somebody said a word in a very strange way, then I would correct them. So So in English, it's important to stress correctly. So if you say, I don't know, for example, if you say basketball, then you stress basketball.
You don't say basketball.
You don't say basketball. That confuses people, right? And another thing that's important, and that's very important for Spanish speakers to stress, at least, is that you have to say the consonants. Because in Spanish, consonants are not so clear. So I made a lot of emphasis on pronunciation of the consonants. So S, T, you know. And I just, with working with pronunciation, I just told them the word and told them to repeat the word. But I didn't stop on the individual sounds, you know. I didn't say this is E, this is I, this is. So I would just say words, complete words. Sometimes you have to focus on the difference, because if you don't pronounce the difference right, then you're saying a different word. For example, well, I can think of a funny example right now, which is beach and bitch, right? So if you don't pronounce that correctly, you're saying something completely different, and that's something that you have to stress. Yeah, but at the same time, I think that English pronunciation is not so difficult for Spanish speakers. So in my case, pronunciation wasn't a big thing in my classes.
But maybe for Vietnamese it is.
Maybe for Vietnamese it is, because it's so different, right? So yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
I think I'm okay.
Okay.
I want to ask, how do you learn vocabulary?
Vocabulary, yes. How do I learn, or
Yeah,
how do
your
I
way
teach?
to learn.
How do I learn vocabulary? I use the dictionary a lot. Yeah.
Look up there. Look up.
I look things up in the dictionary.
Do you often look up the Spanish and English dictionary, or only English?
Well, what I did
Version.
when I was studying English, I look. Well, sometimes if I don't know a word, I look it up in Spanish, English. But most of the times, I try to use the English dictionary, only English. So I would just look for definitions, and so everything is the same thing. Everything is in English, right? So you look at the word, and the definition is in English.
Yeah, but that works when you have the word and you don't know what it means.
Yes.
Yes.
Not if you don't know the word.
If you don't know the word, then you have to look it up in your language, like in the Spanish English dictionary. Yeah, but most of the time I would try to use the English dictionary, because you're still in English. That's the whole point. English all the time. Like if you go away from English, then you don't use the language. So it's better to read the definition in English. So at one point I remember I had the two dictionaries, like one next to the other, on a shelf in my room. And the English dictionary, I really liked it because it was a very good dictionary, and I like dictionaries for some reason. And I would just open it and read it.
So every time you learn a vocabulary, so you use this in the context, or you maybe later you use this?
The thing is, whenever I don't know a word, it's because I need to use it and I don't know how to say it. So if I look it up, then I use it in the context immediately, you know. I don't learn random vocabulary. I learn the vocabulary that I need. That's very important too. That's another thing. It's important that you learn the things that you need to say, right? So in my classes, for example, I wouldn't have like long lists of vocabulary, meaningless.
Yes.
You know,
Meaningless.
just okay. If we're speaking about food, then you have to describe your favorite food, and you have to say how to make it or whatever, for example. And so I would teach you the vocabulary related to that, so you're able to say what you want to say, but not just random vocabulary. That doesn't make sense, because communication is not random. Communication is meaningful. No? So anything that you learn has to have a meaning. Right? That's why I didn't focus on like individual sounds for pronunciation, but rather on words, because words have a meaning, but individual sounds don't. So maybe for pronunciation, another thing that I used, all the memories are coming back, you know?
Yeah.
Another things that I used for pronunciation was tongue twisters.
Tongue twisters.
Yeah.
Like, she says seashell, but she sells seashell, but seashell.
Yeah, exactly. That one or many others. And that's good because people practice pronunciation and it's fun because it's like a game,
Yeah, it's like
right? And it has meaning.
Have you tried the Chaos?
What's
The
that?
Chaos. Really long list of the Netherlands teacher, like 100 years poem.
Oh no.
The Chaos, like it was hard. Like they started with the dearest creature. This what else? Dearest creature is really difficult to pronounce. Like even a native speaker, she would struggle. She would struggle to pronounce some of the words in the Chaos. But the thing is, like the poem written by the overseas teacher.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. This sound like, but yeah, the great. And I want to ask one last thing.
Okay.
So